Hello, everybody. Hi there. My name is Mystical Bev, and I have a website called lightwarrior.co.za. So today, as promised previously in one or two of my previous YouTube videos, I'm continuing my awakening story. What happened is in 2005, we're now in 2025, so that was 20 years ago, I lost my job. I was still single at the time, divorced, and I had two sons living with me. Just bought a house about 6 months before, and I lost my job. So I was in a little bit of a pickle, and I asked the universe to give me wisdom. I asked God to give me wisdom like King Solomon asked for as per the Old Testament of the Bible. And after King Solomon asked for that, God granted him his wish and he became one of the wealthiest men alive. Then I woke up one morning in August of 2005 with my heart pounding, and it was early in the morning, sort of 3 o'clock. I always woke up between 3 and 5 and I meditated. At that point, I'd been meditating for probably 10 years already. So I've been meditating a long time. And I woke up before my meditation, and I woke up and my heart was pounding and perspiration, and I was in a state. And I thought, what is this dream about? And just to tell you, basically, the dream was I found myself in a spaceship. Okay, now I love science fiction. And funny enough, my two boys and one of his girlfriend, who's now the wife, my elder son's wife, I dreamt they were there with me, and the four of us suddenly found ourselves in this spaceship. And we were chattering amongst ourselves, wondering, what's going on? What we're doing here? How did we get here? You know, the usual questions. And then there didn't seem to be anybody else around. And then I found I couldn't breathe. And the same with the others. It was like the air had become foul. An oxygen mask fell down, you know, like in an aeroplane, and we all quickly put the oxygen mask on our nose. And then out of nowhere, steward, this person came and said, "Come, we must go through to the other side where there's better oxygen." So we followed him and to a door at the back of this spaceship. We went in. It felt like we were in an elevator because the floor gave a little bit as we got in, and then the door closed with a huge clang, and it opened on the other side, and we walked out of this place, still with our oxygen masks on. Don't ask questions, you know, it's a dream. And then we saw we were in another plane, another ship, another vehicle. I'm not sure. It looked also like an aeroplane. It was probably another spaceship. And it was white and pristine and clean and beautiful, like a brand new spaceship compared to the previous one, which was a bit moggy, dirty, old. And then this guy said to us, we can take off the oxygen mask. So when we took it off, of course, the air was beautiful and clean. And then as dreams go, suddenly I saw myself in this place. I thought, being a lover of sci-fi, I thought it was maybe another planet. And the lawns were green, and there were green trees, and they were just creepers hanging, green creepers hanging from the trees, and beautiful flowers. Oh, the color was just like I've never seen before. Beautiful colors all over, and it was lovely. And sometimes when I listen to near-death experiences, I kind of think, I wonder if this wasn't a near-death experience. But in any case, I did wake up with a start after the dream. And suddenly I realized there were children flying, no wings, just floating above. And they were giggling and laughing. And it was just an absolute heaven. It was such a beautiful place. And then suddenly I heard this voice coming out of nowhere, but I knew it was God saying, okay, Bev, now that you know the truth about the rapture, you need to go back to earth and you need to tell the people about it. And I thought, cool, I'm okay. Let's go. And we got down to earth, and I didn't know what the truth was, but in my dream I kind of knew. And we got down on earth, and when we started telling people, initially they just laughed at us, my two sons and the girlfriend, myself. They laughed at us. But then eventually it was like we were invisible, like we were in another dimension. They couldn't see us at all. And it was very confusing. And I was getting rather frustrated thinking, how are we going to get to tell these people? So I thought, ask God. So I prayed and I asked God, what must we do now? So God said to me, write the story down, the whole process of the rapture, write it down. And during the day when the people are out working or at school, go into their homes and take this little written thing and put it in the picture frames in their house so that when they get home, they can see it, read it, and know that. And we thought, cool. So we went around and did that. It was very confusing when I woke up, and but I knew it was God speaking to me. I knew that this was a very powerful dream. And then I started thinking, but what is the truth about the rapture? I have no cooking clue. So just to give you a bit of background, before this dream happened and before I asked for wisdom, I was a reborn spirit-filled Christian. In fact, my husband and I were pastors. We had separated, actually got divorced about 4 years before that. And so I was always concerned that I was not good enough to be taken with the rapture. You know, the story in the Bible, I think it's in Revelations, where apparently Jesus returns, the second coming of Christ returns, and there'll be angels and trumpets and whatever, and all the good people will rise up and join them in the heavens and so on. And those that were not good enough would stay on earth. And I always had this fear that I wouldn't be good enough. I was a very radical Christian, and I meditated and prayed and read my Bible and studied. I'd been to Bible school, so there was no chance that I wasn't going to make it. But, you know, there was a series that came out at the time called the Left Behind series, and there was even a movie made about Left Behind series. So it was a genuine concern of mine. So it was weird that this dream came about and said, now that you know the truth about the rapture, you need to go and tell others on earth. I was confused. I thought I don't know the truth. But anyway, I meditated and went to sleep. Then in the morning when I woke up, I picked up my journal, which looked something like this. In fact, I've kept most of them. It's just a cheap book, school notebook. I prefer the hardcover. It seems to store better. And I always write the dates in and the time. And paging back in my journal, because I made a point of keeping track of my dreams. And I went back and I saw I'd had this very similar dream about, I can't remember, I think it was 3 times previously. But you know, you forget it. Even though you write it down, it's in and out. You go back and you read your dream journal and you think, I don't even remember that. I don't remember writing down. Just a tip for when you do keep a dream journal is write immediately when you open your eyes, write it down. Because if you first go to the loo and come back, it's gone. Or if you first do anything before you've written it down, it's gone. So just make a point if you do want to keep track of your dreams, which I highly encourage you. They're very informative. All right, so that was the story. And then my awakening journey began. It was very exciting, but at the same time, it was a lonely journey because I couldn't go back to church after a few weeks after I started learning more things. I'd go into a bookstore looking for I'm an avid reader. Well, I was at that point. I'm not so much now. There's too many YouTube videos to watch and too many other things at the moment. And I went into a bookstore looking for some nice book to read, and a book would sort of grab my attention. I always say it jumps out at me, and then I'd normally buy it. And this is how my journey went. And YouTube just sort of came online probably 6 months before that, 6 months to a year. I can't remember. That was in 2005. And my eldest son was into his computers and he said, Mom, come watch this video. Come watch this video. And I watched this video and it was about the Bible and about how they had changed and not put all the scrolls in from the Bible, from the teachings of Jesus and the disciples. They chose, the clergy or the Romans, they picked which scrolls, which canons, as they called it, they would put into the Bible, and not everything was put in. And then they started finding other scrolls. In 1945, they discovered a whole lot of scrolls in a cave in Nag Hammadi, which is in Egypt, I believe. So things started coming to light. And there, a lot of different things came, different books of, like the Book of Thomas, the Book of Judas, I believe. There's a new book of John, the secret book of Jesus, book of Mary Magdalene, and it goes on and on. And I will continue with my story, but just to say this so that I do not forget, now in 2024, 2025, with AI coming on board, a lot of these scrolls and the clay tablets are being deciphered, because some of the language we couldn't understand, especially on the clay tablets with the hieroglyphics and all those funny little scribbles and scrawls on there. People struggled to decipher them, and AI, which works on pattern recognition, has started deciphering a lot of this stuff, which is so interesting. So a lot more knowledge has come about it, particularly this year. Incredible amounts of ancient knowledge that none of us were told about, none of us knew about, and it changes things drastically. But in any case, so let me get back to 2005. I went to see a elderly couple, all sort of similar time. It was all in the same year because I'd had burnout a few months earlier before I lost my job. So I was on this journey of discovery. So this elderly couple started ministering to me. I went to them a few times and they said to me, you need to listen to God directly, not through the Bible, because the Bible might not be everything, not through a pastor it's their interpretation, the pastor or the teacher. It's that person's interpretation. It's not necessarily the correct meaning. And I mean, no offense to anybody. My husband and I were pastors. I've been there, done that. Really, no offense. But you read it and you get an understanding of what the passage means, and that's what you teach. It's not necessarily that is 100% correct. That is your understanding of it. So each of us will have our own understanding. And then, so they said we must go with what we feel in our heart or in our intuition, in our gut, not from what a pastor says and not from reading the Bible. And then they gave me the story of Adam and Eve. That comes out of the Old Testament. And Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden and they used to walk and talk. with God in the Garden of Eden until you probably all know the story. Adam had a bite, Eve, I beg your pardon, had a bite of the apple tempted by the devil, and they were told that they were not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, only from the tree of life. But then when the serpent offered the apple which came from the tree of knowledge, they now had eaten from the tree of knowledge because Eve gave Adam a bite as well. So they'd eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Before that, they didn't know good and evil. Everything was beautiful. So they fell. We all know the story. They fell from grace. And in any case, they were kicked out of this beautiful garden. But that whole age is called the Adamic age in the Judeo-Christian religion. And then, of course, Moses came on board some years later, and Moses led the Egyptians out of Egypt, or the Jews out of Egypt, and he was given the Ten Commandments. And that stage was called the Mosaic law. And so it was the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not, thou blah, 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 right? And love the Lord your God, love your mother and father, obey this, do not kill, all that sort of stuff. I don't know it anymore, I can't remember. And then Jesus came, and it says he came with a new covenant, and he came to replace the Mosaic law and to take us back to the Adam and Eve, where we directly spoke to God. Okay, so, and Jesus said he brings a new covenant, and this covenant, I mean, this is my own, these are my own words. I'm not reading from any Bible. Thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your might, as you love yourself, which was very interesting now, many years later, because I learned the most important thing is to have self-love, because the new vibration, like Adam and Eve, was all about love. Because at the end of the day, God, the universe, source, creator of all that is love. It is love. It is love. It is an energy. And I don't mean offense. He, she, God is both male and female. It says that in the Bible. So we all say he because that's how we've been indoctrinated, but it's Mother God. Both male and female, and we need to get back to feeding directly from the tree of life, where we speak to God directly, not through priests or pastors or other people, directly. Each one of us, we have that ability. I mean, I've been doing that since before we went into ministry, and I believe that's how we became pastors, because we had such a beautiful, close relationship with the Holy Spirit. Every day, and I still do that, this is a habit, 30 odd years, I would ask my inner being, the Holy Spirit, and I would say, what do you think I should wear today? What shoes? What, I know it's irrelevant things, but everything I do, what should I cook today? What should I, and that's been my biggest heart's desire, to be led by the Spirit, moment by moment, step by step, day by day. And even in the Bible, Jesus said, I am a lamp to your feet and a light to your path. And so that's been my driving force, so to speak. So let me just go back. So books jumped out, etc., etc. But before the books jumped out, it was a desire I had. I had a desire to have wisdom like King Solomon. And I had a desire to know more. Then after the dream, I wanted to know, what is the truth about the rapture? And then things came into my experience to help me find out what the truth is of the rapture. So the moral of this particular little story, this section, is that whenever we have a need or an asking, the universe will collaborate with you. The universe will do whatever it can to bring that into fruition. However, you will only receive it once you are open to receive it, and once you are in the right vibration to receive what's coming in. So you can ask, but if you're not in the right space for vibration for it to go and come in. Now we all know manifestation works by vibration. You will attract things that along the same vibration that you're vibrating at. And what I've learned recently in 2025 is that we need to ask source. I love to call it source. We need to ask source, creator of all that is, what it is we'd like. And then we release it. And we open ourselves up to love, to receive, but we let it go. Have no expectations. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. Just release all expectations and just be led by the Spirit. Go left here, go right here. And just to get onto that little thing, years ago, after my divorce, my kids were still quite young. And I didn't have a lot of money, and I'd run out of money, but I needed petrol in my car, and my car didn't have much petrol in. And we were out visiting a friend of mine, and my boys were young. And I said to the Holy Spirit, please help me to get home on this petrol that's in the car. It was already in reserve. Please help me to at least get home. And also show me the way, because I don't know, we were new in that town and there were no GPSs in those days, and I didn't know the routes. And I just prayed, and as I was driving, turn left here, I turned left here, turn right here, go there, go there, and we got home. Easy peasy. With the petrol. My sons often remind me of that and say, Mom, remember, because they all prayed with me, but we were joyful, and I never once thought I would get stuck on the side of the road. I knew God would come through, and so did they. And we had an expectation that it would happen. We didn't know how, and we got home on fumes. And I know lots of people have told me stories like that. And then the truth about the rapture. Right. So let's go back to that. Now, I started believing, and I wrote a book, which sort of probably 2 or 3 years I was finished. I was finished it after the dream, because I was gathering information. But I only published it 10 years. 12 years later, in 2017, I published that book. And it's called Revelations of the Rapture. But I didn't really market it, but still, it's a very powerful book. And in there, God led me to believe that there isn't going to be a rapture the way we were led to believe through the Bible stories. The rapture is going to be as each one of us works out our salvation, we become more Christ-like. It never said the second coming of Jesus, it said the second coming of Christ. And as Christ is formed on the inside of us, we raise our vibrations, and so the second coming of Christ. Isn't that incredible? And so that's what's happening on the planet right now. I mean, I did publish the book, but I felt uncomfortable, and I didn't market it because I felt people weren't going to receive it well. And I even used to joke and say I'll be burned at the stake like a witch. But I did get the book published, and I thought that's what it meant, that writing it down and putting it in the picture frames. I do have a different interpretation today of possibly rewriting it, but possibly making a movie of it. So I have written a book, just by the way, I've written a book, a science fiction book, a children's book actually, where they do go to another planet, and where they also have to go back and tell people because Earth is in danger, and they need to tell people to evacuate and all that sort of thing. So I need to get it to a movie producer, get the book out there. But all in God's timing. I'm led by the Spirit moment by moment, still to this day. So What else can I tell you about my awakening? It's just been such an exciting journey. It's really, really exciting. So I just thought I'd share that with you, and I'll share more with you as and when I feel led to. Because each one of us, as we become more Christ-like, as we raise our vibrations, which is, in short, your emotions. As you raise your emotions and you become happier through good choices, through choosing life, through laughter, through music, through dancing, whatever it is, doing whatever makes you happy, raises your vibration, and then Christ will rise again. And then when we embody Christ, Christ will use us. And that is how Christ is risen again, the second coming of Christ. And I embody my inner Christ, my divinity, my Christos. Everybody can. And I have been activated and initiated to help others with that. So if anybody needs help, go to my website, lightwarrior, one word, .co.za. There are other light warriors out there, so just be careful that you choose the one with .co.za, because I am in South Africa. So thank you so much for sharing this time with me. I really and truly love sharing my wisdom, my knowledge with you, and I've really enjoyed this time together. So until we speak again, lots of love.